But what I found is so interesting, Margaret and Nick, how tough it is for them to talk about Israel now, knowing all the protests, knowing that we know that this is a genocide and people are discussing this as a genocide. And you can almost feel that they know it's a genocide, but they're still sort of tippy-toeing around it. But what say you about the coverage, just broadly speaking? Let's start there, broadly speaking. What say you about sort of the corporate news coverage, the New York Times sort of coverage of what's happening in Israel, and what's your take on it?
Well, thank you so much. It's great to be back again. My take is that they can't hide anymore. These demonstrations across the country, around the world, have changed forever the way people in this country understand Israel and understand the U.S. relationship with Israel. We know that Israel gets more foreign aid than any other country. We know that the Israel lobby, AIPAC, and other organizations have this grip on American politics. We have known that. But to see these war crimes, and by the way, terms like war crimes are defined. It's not just hyperbole. It's not just my 2 cents or anybody else's 2 cents. Can you see me? I feel like I'm freezing. I'm looking.
It a little bit laggy, but I can still hear you pretty well. So
okay,
yeah, so, like very minimal.
All right, cool. Yes. All right. So terms like war crimes are defined in the Geneva Conventions. Terms like genocide are defined by the United Nations. So this isn't hyperbole. It isn't just anybody's 2 cents. We know that that's what's happening in Israel. Israel is committing war crimes on our dime, controlling our political process, determining who we can and can't vote for. 2 people have come forward in Michigan, for example, and said that they were offered $20 million in campaign funds to challenge Rashida Tlaib in a primary. And that people know that now. So it's a little more difficult to say, oh, poor Israel. It's a little more difficult not so difficult that they don't try to present the administration's view and present basically war propaganda. That's all Morning Joe is. But people know too much now. People have stopped tiptoeing around, stopped saying, well, Jewish people might be mad and I have to think about their feelings. People are saying, what about my feelings about war crimes being committed on my dime, about people not representing me, representing the military-industrial complex or another country, or representing imperialism instead of what I want. So fortunately, it is a little more difficult for them to say what they've always said. Excuse me. And it's a beautiful thing to see people taking it to town halls, to interrupting their members of Congress or Senate and telling them what they feel. So these propagandists have had to change a little bit. They've had to change the story, just not enough, but because they're still talking about why we've got to give Israel money and stand with Israel no matter what, and Hamas are a bunch of Nazis and so on and so forth. But things have changed, and for the better. They have to keep up this. They don't want to say ceasefire. They say humanitarian pause. It was supposed to be for a certain number of days, and they've had to extend it because people won't stand for it anymore. It's too hard for them to do it. So yeah, there have been some changes, but not enough. Keep up the pressure. People are not afraid anymore of being called. If you call everybody an anti-Semite, then what does it mean? Somebody once said that an anti-Semite, and I would credit the person if I remembered who said this, an anti-Semite used to be someone who didn't like Jews. Now it's someone that Jews don't like. And so it has power. If you question something, then you're called an anti-Semite. Well, then, it's not so scary, but the other point is that's why they have to resort to this brute force, the doxing, the firing
Absolutely.
people, the keeping people from getting their jobs, the censorship, because of this popular opposition.
Yeah, that's the weaponization of capital that you can expect through capitalist models. That's how you don't really have mechanisms to resist imperialism in the ruling class under the capitalist system, where your livelihood is so dependent on capital, fam. So there's so many people in the professional managerial class who want to stand for Palestine, but they can't because they can't lose their comfy job. And now, I'm gonna humanize these people. I explained this before. Imagine that you worked your entire life, you went through school, you're all just doing debt. You got 3 kids you're taking care of. We will want people to make a sacrifice for Palestinians, but how many people realistically gonna do that? That's why, as revolutionaries, we got to understand that there will always be limits to what we can expect the professional managerial class to engage in anti-colonial activism. They may do like social warrior, social justice issues, but they're never gonna do anything that will threaten their capital, which is why Zionism and imperialism is such a threat to the working class, because they can always weaponize their capital against anyone that fight their agenda. But what did you want to try to, Margaret? I think you did. Anything you want to say real quick?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that's why it's important for us, those of us who can speak up, to speak up on behalf of people who just say, I want a ceasefire. Then they're called pro-Palestinian. Maybe they are, but maybe they aren't. Maybe they just want a ceasefire. Maybe they don't want their tax dollars to be used to bomb hospitals. But so, of course, these people are being attacked for saying the most mild statements. But that's how we have to be revolutionary and point that out and defend them. I was so happy to see, I can't remember that horrible man who was harassing the food vendor, Seldowitz. Is that his last name?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Who had, and it tells you who's in charge of foreign policy.
Yes.
That horrible people. They are racist. They are true believers in U.S. power. He harassed the street vendor. He also harassed the Russian UN consulate. He harassed. That was not in the press. These on video, harassing them, calling women whores. They also asked for help from the police, and we're told, well, it's free speech. There's nothing we can do to help you. I'm so happy to see him on a perp walk. Even if he walks away with a fine or a slap on the wrist, I think it was so beautiful that he didn't get away with it. But there are many people like him, and they are powerful people. So we're up against a lot. So if we're going to call ourselves revolutionary, this is the moment to really stand up and be true to that word.
I noticed that a lot of liberals and Democrats had a hard time reporting on that story because he was an Obama official.
Yes.
Liberal, fam. So what did I tell you guys? Many people think I'm being deflammatory. Like, people think I say stuff for clicks all the time. It's an accusation I get hit with all the time. Because I would say stuff like, I encounter more racism from a white liberal than I have a white conservative redneck. And that's true. I live in Missouri, and that's just my own personal experience. And now you guys see this unhinged Obama official, the racist liberal that you guys think have the moral high ground over a Trump supporter, exposed. So they've been having a hard time reporting on this story because of this fact. And I'm glad you brought this up, because this is a point that post-duopolists have to continue to make. There's no more high ground between Democrats and Republicans. They all have morally reprehensible people, like that State Department official that was caught being an unhinged racist, harassing people. One thing I want to go back. Go ahead.
You also have to remember, Biden's just continuing U.S. foreign policy. He's not the first one. Now because he's Biden and he's not as slick and as smooth as Obama, he runs over to Israel, which he should not have done, and openly basically tells Netanyahu, you do whatever you want to do.
Yes.
Because they're on the same page, by the way. And he couldn't get away with the things Obama got away with. But this is just a continuation of decades of foreign policy. You just have a president who's not savvy enough to hide that fact. But that's actually a good thing, because people see how horrible U.S. foreign policy really is.